Hi, my name is Maria and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought that I would talk to you guys a little bit about eyeshadow palettes. Now if you have watched any of my videos previously, you will have probably noticed that I talk about eyeshadow palettes and tend to use palettes when I do my eye looks. So I've used Kat Von D, Too Faced, some Urban Decay, that kind of thing. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about why I like palettes and also some things to consider if you are interested in getting one. On the whole, even though you're putting out a little extra money for, well, not a little extra money, a lot of extra money for an eyeshadow palette, I feel that it's a quick way to build your eyeshadow collection, especially if you're starting out. And as well, even though it's a lot of money to begin with, I feel that it's more economical in the long run. So for example, and I'll just talk from a drugstore perspective, this is a NYX eyeshadow, and this single eyeshadow was $8. This NYX palette, which has a ridiculous amount of shades. Now, granted, they're smaller, but this was $25, and this came with eyeshadows and then also a bunch of lip glosses. This retails for $25, that's at London Drugs, and I picked mine up for $14.99 because it was on sale. So you guys do the math. $8 for this, for me $14.99 for this one, and all of a sudden I've got a lot of shades to work with. So yeah, I find it more economical, even if you're looking at the higher end. A lot of times, like for instance, a MAC single shadow, which is about the same size as this NYX one, runs for $19 Canadian. And I picked up this, this Kat Von D palette that has 12 shadows, 3 really big ones and then the rest small. I think it's 12 shadows, 9, 10, 11, 12, yeah. So I got this one for $59. And I got it as a gift for Christmas, but yeah, they retail at $59. So all of these shadows for $59 are one single shadow for $19. Again, I just feel like the palettes are a way better bang for your buck. The other thing that's great about palettes is that they, you know, you've got all your eyeshadows in one convenient location, which personally I find quite nice, although sometimes I'll have a couple palettes sitting out because I like mixing and matching. So some things to ask yourself prior to making a purchase is, what type of palette are you interested in getting? Are you wanting one to supplement colors that you already have, or are you getting it to actually be your everyday palette? Yeah, that's going to make a difference in what you're looking at. So what I would recommend if you're looking for an everyday palette is to go with a palette that is more neutral in shades. And sometimes neutral palettes can have a couple colors thrown in. That's great because then it gives you a little bit extra to work with. If you're going for a more glamorous look, or like kind of nighttime party looks, then you might want to look at a palette that has some extra color in it. This one is neat. This is an Urban Decay palette because it's got some neutral shades, but it's also got a lot of bright colors in it. The next thing that I want to talk about is what makes a good palette. So for me, what I'm looking for in a palette is a palette that has great color pigmentation and also good color payoff. When I put it on the eye, the color, I'm not having to build up the color by dipping into my brush constantly and going back to the eye. I'm also looking for long-lasting shadows. I want them to, I want to be able to wear the shadow look for the whole entire day, not having to touch anything up. So definitely want to look for shadows that are long-lasting. I also want to look for a variety of finishes in a palette. So for instance, in this Too Faced palette, I've got several matte shades, and matte shades are just kind of like paint. Matte has no shine or shimmer or glimmer to it. I want some satin or shimmer shades, so I've got a few of those. I've got one matte highlight, one shimmer highlight, and then there's a few that are glittery And so that means that they might be matte or they might be satin, but then they've got some glitter particles in it. So I like to look for a variety of finishes, but primarily for a day-to-day wear look, or like day-to-day wear, I don't want a whole lot of glitter in my palette. So I'm looking for a palette that primarily has a mix of matte shades and satin to shimmer shades. The other thing that I look for is a palette that's going to give me several different looks. So using my Kat Von D palette, with this I can get a really light daytime look using some of these lighter shades, some of the matte ones, just a very simple eye. I can get like a bronzy look, I can get kind of a reddish look, I can get a smoky look. I get excited just thinking about it. No, I just really love palettes. But anyway, so I can get tons of different looks, different color combinations. So you want to look for a palette that can offer you a variety of different looks. When I'm looking at the shadow, the quality of the shadow, I want something that has easy blendability as well. So there's the color payoff that I'm wanting, but I also want blendability. Now I tried this one palette, it was from Tarte. I got it again as a Christmas gift. And when I went to put the shadows on and work with the shadows in the crease, they just all kind of blended together and got muddy really fast. I don't want that. I want to be able to see some color separation. Like on this today, you can definitely see color, like a different blend of colors, but they easily blend together without having harsh lines. So that's another thing that you want to consider. I want to make sure that there's a nice balance of light shades, medium shades for the crease or transition, and then dark shades to either smoke it up or just deepen up my crease. So I'm looking for 3 different tones or 3 different shade ranges in my palette. When purchasing a palette, whether it be drugstore or high-end, but usually high-end, because then you're putting out a lot more money. Palettes range anywhere from about $40 for smaller ones to $70 usually. There's some that are way higher end, but those just simply aren't in my budget range. So, but you know, it's quite a lot of money, like anywhere from 40 to 70. To me, that's a lot. Maybe for some people it isn't, but that's a lot of money. So I want to make sure I'm getting something that I'm going to use and that I'm going to love. So what I will do is I will first of all set my budget. How much approximately do I want to spend? Then I want to make a decision on what type of palette I want. Is it going to be a palette that is for neutral, or like I said, you know, throwing in the colors? It's when I find one that I like, I will swatch all the colors on my hand. You know, so I might have, you know, the colors of one palette on this hand, the colors of another palette on this hand. And then usually I'll leave the store, go walk around, look at the colors in different lighting. And usually even that day I won't buy. I might go look one more time, make sure I know the names. Then I head home and I start Googling it. I look at reviews on that particular palette and that brand, see what the reviews are like. I'll go on YouTube and watch tutorials on different looks, different reviews on YouTube to get a really good idea of whether I like the way the eyeshadows are working on someone else, whether I like the looks that I'm seeing, all of that kind of stuff. Once I have a firm idea as to how that palette performs, then I'll go back and pick it up. I also wait a lot of times until Christmas or birthdays. Now quickly, I just want to talk about a few brands that I like. When looking at drugstore options, overall, it's rare that I'll buy a palette from the drugstore because I find that the color payoff just isn't that great. So even though I might only be spending $15 or max $20 for a nice palette or around there, if the color payoff isn't going to be great, I'd rather just save my money to get a really good palette from Sephora. But a couple palettes that I have enjoyed that are drugstore priced would be this NYX Nude on Nudes that I showed you. Lots of color ranges. The quality of the shadows aren't necessarily even across the board, but overall it's got a good color payoff. The blendability is pretty good. And this again was $25 at London Drugs. E.L.F, which is Eyes, Lips, Face. It hasn't been available in Canada for very long, but these are super affordable. This was $14.99. And again, the shades on this one, not near as good as a high-end palette, but with that being said, decent color payoff for the most part, and easy to blend. So I really like that for drugstore. Some of my favorite brands in the high end would be Kat Von D. I find her shadows are long lasting, highly pigmented, very creamy. So I really enjoy her shadows. And my favorite is the Monarch Palette. Also, Urban Decay has excellent shadows. They have a series called Naked. There's Naked 1, 2, and 3, and they all have different color ranges. So this one is very neutral, but tends to be kind of more taupey and gold. I also really enjoy the Too Faced shadows. They're excellent. This chocolate bar palette I would say is my favorite palette. Again, very creamy shades, highly pigmented, love them. So for Canada, that's it. If you're in the States, Lorac Pro is excellent. I hear that Nordstrom's in Calgary carries the Lorac Pro palette as well. This has a great mix of mattes and satiny shimmer type shades. Lots of good use out of that palette as well. Every so often, companies will put out palettes that include a variety of other products. So this is from Tarte, and it has a blush, 6 eyeshadows, a highlighter, and a bronzer. This was $45, and this is excellent quality. So this palette from Tarte, Tarte's a neat company as well because their ingredients, they tend to be more on the natural side, and I've gotten a ton of use out of that. And my favorite is at Christmas time, companies will put out large palettes for really good price. So this I got from Too Faced. They usually come out in October, and this was called the Everything Nice palette. It has 20 shadows, 2 blushes, a highlighter, and a bronzer. And this you can get a ton of looks out of. So if you're starting and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can afford to spend that much money on just an eyeshadow palette, wait until about October and head to Sephora. As soon as their Christmas things come out, there's so much to choose from. Well, not so much to choose from, but they're usually beautiful palettes. With that being said, not all palettes are created equal, so you've got to go in, check it out like I talked about, and make the decision based on whether you like the shadows, like the colors, whether you're going to get a lot of usability out of it. So although not all shadows are created equal, and like I said, you've got to go do your homework, primarily I love high-end shadow palettes because they're just fun to work with. You can get a ton of different looks out of them. The quality of the shadows are good, your look stays nice, you can get tons of different looks with it. I just think they're fun. So yeah, I guess that would be happy shopping. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments, and hopefully I can answer any of them that come up. Just go have fun. Talk to you later.